Welcome to Lift Your Legacy. My name is Jacob Rupp, father, husband, and rabbi. And each week we bring you an inspiring person or message to help you unlock your inner potential and create change that will impact the future. Thank you for listening, and let's get to it.
All right, well, this is one that I love, a topic that's near and dear to my heart: emotional eating, health, wellness, getting your life in order, getting your body in order. As someone that has worked, struggled with, coached, and been involved with weight loss, exercise, health, body image, pretty much my whole life. There was probably a couple years in the early times that it wasn't on my mind. I love the topic, and I know how important it is for life, really for life, for your own self-esteem, for your own health, for how you feel, etc. So I'm thrilled to have an expert on, Aliza Hendon, who is also a health coach that helps women specifically, and I guess some men as well, lose weight, get back in control. She lost 40 pounds after having her third child, went on a health and weight loss journey, and got so much out of it that now she helps other people do the same thing. So we cover everything. With full disclosure, as two Orthodox Jews, we do cover a lot of topics that specifically relate to the Orthodox Jewish community, the amount of eating that we do, the holidays, and the whole structure. So know that. But in general, there's a lot of really great gems here, and I'm very excited. Obviously, if you have any ideas about wanting to work with a coach, please feel free to reach out to myself, to Aliza. I have her contact information at the end of the interview, and I hope you get a lot out of this. Thank you very much. Aliza Hendon, thank you so much for joining me today. You're a coach to women, to men, and you help people build healthy relationships with food. Tell me a little bit about how you got started on this process.
Thank you so much. I mean, it's an interesting question. I guess the way I got started for myself was, thank God I have 3 children. They're all 18 months apart. My oldest just turned 5. And when I was pregnant with my youngest child, not only was I 30, 40 pounds overweight, but I really was just at a place where I just was not taking care of myself mentally, physically. I'm definitely an overachiever in a lot of ways. I like to do a lot, and thank God I'm very busy. And, it kind of hit me at some point that I can't continue treating my body and myself the way that I am. At that point I was doing Shaitl's wigs full time. I'm a Shaitl macher, I'm a stylist and stuff like that. And, I just remember myself before Pesach 2 years ago, on my feet, not taking care of myself, not drinking any water, or, breakfast and self-care, as I say, were not in my vocabulary. So that was kind of where I realized, this is not what I want to teach my daughters. I wasn't taking care of myself physically or emotionally. And even all that I was doing, I never felt like it was enough. And, I feel like health has to start with a decision that I'm a human being and I need to take care of myself. So that's kind of where it started. Like I said, after I gave birth to my youngest, I was overweight, and I really was at a place where I wanted to lose weight. And all I knew were these, quick fix weight loss programs out there. And I started with one of those and, very quickly dropped the weight. And that's actually how I was introduced to health coaching, because the particular program I did had a health coach that you got to work with. At the same time, I had never heard of a health coach. I never thought in a million years that I would ever be a person to coach or help people with their health. I did not grow up eating healthy, healthy eating, anything like that. And that's kind of how I got introduced to it. So after coaching with that program for a couple of months, and once I finished losing my weight, I remember realizing how am I going to keep this up? People lose weight all the time and gain it right back. And I didn't want to be one of those people. So that's when I really started searching for something else that was not only going to help me, but a way that I could help other people who are looking to lose weight in a real sustainable way. And that's when I found my training program, and I have been coaching since then. So the rest is history.
So there's a bunch of different directions to go here. I think that one question that a lot of us deal with And I'm speaking as a man, but and you speaking for women, I think it is a very general challenge. Would be, first of all, the idea of feeling okay in your own body. And one of the, especially within the Jewish world, there's such a, I guess you could say, on one hand, there's, it's all about what's on the inside. It's all about, building yourself on a spiritual level. On the other hand, there is a tremendous amount of societal pressure for sure on women, I think also on men, to look a certain way. How does one balance that, I guess you could say, desire for looking good, looking great, doing it in a wholesome spiritual way, as let's say as a Jewish person, with kind of coming into their own and feeling comfortable with who they are?
No, that's a really interesting question. And I think it's something that oftentimes I speak with my clients about, because, like when I initially will talk to somebody to see if, coaching would be a fit for them, people feel a little bit funny, like, oh, I want to lose weight. And straight up, it's like, that's not vanity to want to lose weight and feel comfortable in your body. I think it's 100% essential. Obviously there's different issues, like obviously the societal idea of how a woman or a man is supposed to look, unfortunately, is completely unrealistic. And, something I speak openly about is that even for myself, when I finished losing my weight, I didn't all of a sudden look at the mirror and see a skinny person. I did not. And I feel like that's also a big part of the work that people need to do when they're looking to lose weight. But I think in a spiritual
Can we
sense,
stop on that? Because I think
Sure.
that's so important. I also do a little bit of health coaching, and I think that's
nice.
fundamental. It's a fundamental point, which is, if you are a person who, and again, with most people with weight loss, I know some people have metabolisms that slow down when they get old, but a lot of people have really been struggling with this their entire life. And so if you're always been more or less uncomfortable with how you look, it's really, even if you hit your your lowest weight loss goal, you probably are not going to look at yourself in the mirror and fall in love with yourself like you're an Instagram model.
No,
Right?
absolutely
But
not.
what's the deal with that? How does a person say, oh, great? It's funny because it's the same thing. A lot of times people would say, like, I was listening to there's a guy named Dana White who started the UFC, and he was talking about how, like, you kind of go through, once you make a lot of money, you have about 2 months where you're really happy with it. And then all of a sudden you're like kind of back to square one. So I think there is that feeling where, oh, great, I can fit into a dress or pants that I couldn't wear before. I'm wearing these certain sizes. I have people saying, wow, you lost so much weight. But there is going to be that point where you might have reached your goal, but you're not going to look at yourself in the mirror and fall in love with yourself. So how do you deal with that?
No, absolutely. One thing, I think it's, first of all, being realistic with a person's body type. Like, it's something I tell people all the time, like, I might wear a certain size, but that's never going below a certain point. And it's true, like you said, I remember when I first lost weight, I felt, oh my gosh, like I look so different, but pretty close, pretty soon that didn't last anymore. And I even remember when I was still doing my training for my holistic health coaching, part of what was great about my program is that we get to coach with each other, with the, different students. And I remember like complaining to one of my, what we call skills lab partners, and saying how, like, oh, I just want to lose another 5 pounds. And this was after I lost my 40 pounds. And she was just like, Aliza, like, you just need to love yourself. Like, love those 5 pounds. Those are a part of you. That's not something to be ashamed of. And I don't know quite what it was, but that hit me very hard. And I think that's a big part of it, is that's why I said at the beginning, health is about accepting yourself and saying, I am worth it, and I am worth taking care of my body. And that's all part of the healthy mindset. Because if you hate your body and you're constantly poking and prodding and looking at yourself in a certain way, it doesn't matter what weight you get to, you're never going to be satisfied with it, And I think that's really what it is that it's accepting and realizing that what society is portraying is completely unrealistic for a person. Maybe some people have certain body types, and that is great, but most of us don't, and we're not naturally going to look like that, So, yeah.
But then the flip side is, of course, and I think that there is such a need for extremism or I don't think there's a need for extremism. I think there's a tendency towards extremism. So then you say, well, if anyway I can't look the way that I want to look, so then, what's wrong with another 35 pieces of kugel or something like that? So how do you balance back on the other side and say, because I know that there is a large a large demographic of people that feel like, it's more important just to be happy with who you are and actually have like very large bodies kind of a thing and very unhealthy habits. So how do you then pull someone like that and say, no, you actually have to, I don't know if you say that, but when should a person sort of feel it within themselves, I actually do have to make a serious lifestyle change?
No, it's a good question because possibly what you're referring to is I know there's a movement out there called health at every size. I'm not here to say one way or the other, but I think that it's two sides of a coin, like being overweight, extremely overweight is unhealthy, but also trying to be as skinny as possible and working so hard to maintain that weight and constantly, oh, I gained 2 pounds. I need to make sure that I don't eat today, whatever it might be. Neither side is healthy. And I feel like part of what really helped me to find that balance for myself, there's a book out there, not a lot of people have heard of it. It's called Body Kindness by Rebecca Scritchfield. I'm not sure if you've heard of it or not. But she talks about the concept of being kind to your body. And she kind of sees both ends of it. Like, she'll say like, just like it's not kind to your body to, let's say, enforce militant exercise on yourself because you ate, a ton of cake the other day, right? It's also not kind to not move your body and to not do exercise. So it's kind of about finding that balance. And it's hard because each person, that's going to look different individually. It's hard to, I feel like when somebody has a certain mindset of either, oh, I'm fine being, 100 pounds overweight and I'm healthy, versus somebody else on the other end of the spectrum who's like, oh, I need to be a size 2 or else. It's, when someone's in that mindset, it's hard to explain it to them a different way. So I think it's a challenge because you're right. There are a lot of different schools of thought out there. And I guess all I can do as a coach is to explain my view on it, as far as how I feel, because at the end of the day, it's mindset. It's all about your mindset. You can be whatever physical weight you want to be, but if you're obsessing about it, that's not healthy. And that's kind of how I view it.
So it's an interesting point that maybe we can get into. You mentioned that you are I forgot, like highly motivated or very driven individual. I also feel that way about myself. And I think a lot of people feel, that they have their areas, and health is one of those things where, it's kind of you're on or you're off, at least for me. And I think that I've really exhibit these sort of, these, I can call it bipolar, whatever you want, you're like really healthy, or you're like eating, pretzels and cream cheese for hours on end.
Sure.
How does a person who is highly motivated to achieve success kind of go into it with the realistic expectations? What are realistic expectations? How do you, and I know that's very specific for each client, but is there a general principle or general rule that when someone comes to you and says, I don't like this, I don't feel comfortable right now, how do you analyze, well, what are our realistic goals?
No, it's an interesting question. I mean, what's coming to mind for me right now is that oftentimes, and I guess this is a lot of, my training as a coach, is that let's say someone comes to me wanting to lose weight, right? They say, I want to lose 20 pounds. So as a coach, we understand that it's not necessarily about the outcome that they want. It's about understanding what the why is underneath the why, right? So like for everybody, that's going to look different. Someone might come to me and say, I need to lose 20 pounds. And I'll say, okay, so what's important about that for you? Why is it important for you to lose 20 pounds? I don't feel good in my body, and I'm actually looking to get married. So really, that's kind of what I'm looking to, I'm looking to find a husband. And I feel like if I lose 20 pounds, I'll be more confident in myself, and that'll help me to reach that goal. And the deeper we dig in, we understand that it's not the weight loss they're looking for, right? It's what they think the weight loss will bring them. And I've had that happen with clients when, through my programs, I'm working, during, their one-on-one program with me, that they realize that they're able to achieve that thing, whatever it might be for them that they want, without actually getting those results. Does that make sense to you? Like,
well, that's very dangerous. I mean, in a lot of ways, that's very dangerous, because you're 100% right. If a person says, I want to lose 20 pounds because I currently hate myself and I'll love myself if I lose 20 pounds, I don't think it takes much of a rocket scientist to look at that and say, well, I think you got some deeper issues. On the flip side, you have this challenge, like exactly like you said, where you can essentially get a person to start to build healthier habits or to feel better about themselves. And again, then you kind of, and again, I don't want to, knock on any approaches out there, but then you do have that quote, health at any size approach where I hate to say it, but like, I don't hate to say it, I guess I'll say it, I'll be very honest. Like, if you are a person that is healthier for whatever body type you have, I'm pretty sure, statistically speaking, there are better options in terms of shidduchim. There are better options in terms of working. Just, you look a certain way, and that's a very important. It's funny because on one hand, like the Jewish world, like we're all about you're supposed to look put together, and
Yeah.
on the other hand, it's like, but if I'm massively overweight or I look super unhealthy, like we don't quite put the two together. So the question would be like, how do you overcome, and is it fair? Is it right? Is it appropriate to try to superimpose and kind of be honest about the fact that the society rewards someone that is physically healthy? That's super controversial. I don't know how you're going to walk me with that one. Sorry about that.
No, it's totally cool. I mean, it's an interesting concept. It's something I've thought about a lot because it's something I do talk to my clients about. I think that at the end of the day, like we keep saying, it's very individual, and it really very much so depends. And like we said before, wanting to lose weight, I don't think is vain. And I think from a healthy standpoint and from, a self-esteem standpoint, there is a place for it. But I think that, like I said before, it's important to first of all understand why and what's going on, and then be able to implement the habits and all those things that we talk about so that they can actually reach that point. Remind me again the original question, because now I lost my train of thought.
I think that the question is that I think that we live in a society as a person with a public platform, as a health coach, we live in a society where you have to be so careful about what you say. And on one hand, we are all about advocating health, but on the other hand, we could get skewered for saying, we're creating an image that is, kind of the non-Jewish world of these superstar people that are completely unrealistic, and it's a hard thing to kind of walk that barrier. I don't know. It's an interesting question. Tell me a little bit about how you build a healthy relationship with food, or how you start to notice that your relationship with food might be unhealthy.
So I guess, when you say, a healthy or unhealthy relationship with food, I guess that kind of goes into, a lot of the work I do around, which is like emotional eating, right? Eating for emotional reasons, eating to avoid or numb out certain emotions that we don't want to deal with. And
so talk about that, because I think that unless you're really like working on that, like most people don't even know that they're doing it. What does it mean? How am I if I feel like anxiety, how is eating going to help me?
So, for example, let's say you're feeling anxious, right? Oftentimes, people think of emotional eating, let's say, as like, I'm sad, so I'm going to sit in the freezer and eat my ice cream, right? But oftentimes, I feel like really what's going on is that we're trying to avoid it. We're trying to numb that feeling out. So with anxiety, for example, let's say I'm anxious about something. It's a lot easier to go and eat like chocolate chips out of my pantry or whatever's going on, instead of actually dealing with the anxiety and dealing with the stress, right? So that's really where that comes in. And, it's a fine line, because part of what I tell my clients all the time, and anybody, is that emotional eating is normal. We all eat for emotional reasons. Shabbos, we're celebrating Shabbos. It is a mitzvah to eat good food on Shabbos. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. We eat at weddings, we eat at kiddushim, brisim, whatever it is. That's a normal thing. And also, at a very young age, we learn right away from birth that, eating equals comfort, right? You think about a newborn baby who's nursing or bottle feeding from their mother. That's instantly, yes, they are getting the physical nourishment, but they're also getting that emotional and mental nourishment. So it's hard. So when does it become a problem, right? So I guess the line I draw is when, first of all, if it's becoming, your means for coping, like meaning that is the main avenue you take in order to cope with anxiety or stress, or if you're depressed or whatever it might be. But also, which is more what I work with, is when it's when it's conflicting with your health goals, right? So if somebody's looking to lose weight, right, and they're emotional eating, they're stressed out, they have a stressful job, and they're eating at work all the time to be able to deal with that, then they're going to have a difficult time. No matter what diet they're doing, they're not going to be able to lose the weight because they're still, emotional eating is still a big part of their life. So
how does a person break that? I'm saying, like, yeah, say your job is terribly difficult. And I love what you said, that, you have to sort of figure out, is the mechanism that you're using, your emotional eating, is that kind of conflicting with your goals, that you don't really like how you look, or you want to look a certain way. How does a person start to break that, or to call awareness to it? What is the value of working with a coach in this regard in order to kind of help get through it?
Well, no, it's a good question. I think, first of all, the value in being able to work with a coach in this is that the first thing, in order to change any habit or anything you want to change, you need to first be able to take a step back and look at the situation from a different perspective. And when we're so engrossed in our lives and everything's going badly and we're using food as a way to eat, and I think I'm fat and nothing's going well, it's pretty hard to take a step back from that. So that's a huge part of having a coach, is to be able to take that step back and have an outside perspective and to show you different options. But my biggest belief in emotional eating is that, or really anything you're looking to change, is that we have to be able to learn to switch away and turn away from judgment, from being hard on ourselves, to curiosity. And that's kind of a simple yet broad statement, but it's very powerful when you actually apply it. So for example, like, let's say, I work with a lot of mothers. So very commonly after the kids go to bed, women find themselves in their pantries wanting to eat stuff. And often, once you do it, yeah, maybe it feels good while you're eating it, but afterwards everybody just feels gross and disgusting.
Why?
And yeah, why did I do that? What's wrong with me? I have a wedding next week. Like, what was I thinking? And you're never going to grow or change when you're coming from that place of judgment or being hard on yourself or feeling guilty. So I really feel like with emotional eating, the first step is that you have to switch from being judgmental to being curious, getting curious. Because when I think about curiosity, right, I think about like when I'm watching my daughter play house with her sisters, I'm like, oh, why is she wearing that like this? Or why is she doing that? And you're curious. There's no judgment. You're not saying, wow, she looks so dorky. Why is she wearing that? You're saying, oh, like, that's so cute. That's interesting. So it's the same with ourselves. So what I tell my clients, the first step is that you need to get curious about what's going on. Isn't it interesting that I'm in my pantry right now eating chocolate chips? I wonder what's going on underneath. Maybe I'm a little bit stressed out. I'm curious what's going on there.
Because you're saying it's so rarely. One of the things that I oftentimes recognize is, it's like, I'm not hungry. It's so rarely are we actually motivated by hunger. It's so often other stuff. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Absolutely. No, it's very true. I think, and then the next step after being able to figure out what's going on and, getting curious about what's happening underneath, is to understand that we all have different triggers, things that trigger us to eat. Cause just like you said, it's rarely out of hunger. So, the way I kind of break it down is that we have physical triggers. So that could be things like, sometimes when we're thirsty, really, we want to eat, or, when we're tired. Yeah, exactly. Or even sometimes, side effects from medications. There's a lot of different physical triggers that could be going on. There's also environmental triggers, like being at the Shabbos table. That's a total environmental trigger. Or being at the grocery store, or watching other people eat, or smelling food. Those are all environmental triggers. But then there's also the emotional triggers, which could be sadness, boredom, stress, overwhelm. So in order to be able to change anything, you've got to first be able to take that step back and understand what is triggering me right now. And that's where the curiosity comes in, understanding and getting curious about what those triggers might be.
So that's huge. So there's physical triggers, there's emotional triggers, and there's environmental triggers.
Yes.
All three of those. And so you find yourself eating, you should become curious and say sort of, what is triggering me right now?
Yes, exactly. Because only then can you start finding a different solution, because that's how habits work. Like, it's not going to work if you just say, oh, I'm taking the chocolate chips out of my pantry and I'm just not going to eat anymore. No, you're going to go find something else.
Right.
You're going to figure something else to do, because that need at the end of the day isn't being taken care of properly.
Right.
That's really where emotional eating comes from. There is some need, or, something, emotional, physical, whatever it might be, that needs to be taken care of and addressed.
Well, one of the big challenges also that a lot of people have and struggle with within the Jewish world is that, even if there's like, we have all of these emotional or environmental triggers that are all like lined up. So it's like, okay, I'm going to get healthy after Hanukkah, but you're like, but Purim is really going to close, and it's like Pesach's coming, and then it's Shavuos. So how do you, and even if you don't even look at those, like large macro holidays, you have Shabbos every single week, and it becomes very challenging. So how do you advise for a person that's living a, observant Jewish life, or in general, you have to go out to meals with clients and stuff like that. How do you advise talking to yourself to kind of get through these environmental triggers? And also the major factor is like that whole sense of like deprivation that people feel like, I don't want to live a terribly deprived life.
No, those are a lot of really important points you brought up. I mean, I feel like, first of all, I mean, obviously, yeah, as Jews, we have Shabbos every week. We've got Thanksgiving going on every single week. We've got all these holidays, and it's such a challenge. That's such a big challenge we face. And I feel like it's important to understand, which is also something I talk a lot about, is that unfortunately, this is, part of our culture is that, we make the holidays and we make Shabbos about food. Like food is a major part of it. You think about, Shavuos, right? It's like, how many cheesecakes can I make? How many dairy things can I make? How much butter can I use, right? And I think it's important to recognize that, yeah, like food is an aspect of the holiday and of Shabbos, but it's just one aspect. That shouldn't define it. And I think that for me, when I first started losing my weight and getting healthy, that was a huge, step back I took, was realizing like, wow, everybody is so obsessed with like having all the different side dishes and having all the different desserts at the meal, when really like, that's not the focus of the day. And that, I think, is, that's a huge important thing that I think that a lot of us need to realize, first of all, when
you're saying it opens up kind of an esoteric problem of it's, and I just read an article about how, the Purim, there are all these like crazy parties, and, and people are like, well, the drinking and the parties is not actually like the main part of Purim. And
right.
I think the thing is fascinating, because the idea is that we essentially have to sort of re-examine how we connect with the various components of our spiritual life, because I guess it's just always easier to connect with food because you don't really have to do much and it's just there. And if it, you can buy it or whatever it is. So you have to like, it takes a lot less work to actually try to figure out like, what is this holiday all about to me?
Right. No, it's true, because I mean, it's, at the end of the day, it's about finding a balance, because yeah, like you mentioned about, depriving, like, I don't think it's right for someone to go into Purim, let's say, or Hanukkah or whatever it is, and say, I am not having a single, treat on Purim, or I'm not having a single donut or latke on Purim. It's about understanding that food has its place, but you need to be mindful about it. And you need to figure out, where does this fit in right now with my goals? Because like we said before, if you're somebody who right now is looking to lose weight, and that's necessary for you, for your health, for your physical appearance you're looking to do, then you need to be in alignment with that. And oftentimes when we're eating, there's no mindfulness happening there. We just find our hand at the, at the bottom of the bag and say, whoa, how did that happen?
How does exercise fit in? Because I know that I think there's a bunch of different challenges. Obviously, there's the time component that's a challenge. And something that you and I spoke about earlier that I want you to really kind of speak about is this idea that, is it selfish if I want to go take off and exercise? So how much do you advise clients to exercise? What role do you think exercise has in the process of being healthy? And again, there's such I think I personally feel, because I'm doing a lot of, bodybuilding and stuff like that there's such a judgment behind people that want to work out in a way that it's like, aggressive and intense, as opposed to just kind of a leisurely walk where you put on tennis shoes and keep your suit on, kind of a thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, first of all, like, exercise is not my main area of focus. It is definitely a component of health, and something I definitely speak to my clients about. And I think that, first of all, I like to kind of change the way we look at exercise. And I kind of like to think of it more as movement, because when we think of exercise, like, yeah, I need to go to the gym and be there for an hour 3 times a week, or else it's not, it's nothing. I mean, I know, I'll be honest, like, exercise is probably one of my biggest personal struggles. I mean, I'm busy, I've got kids. It's really hard to find the time, but I know that it's such an important part of, forget physical health, emotional health, and mental health. Exercise is a huge way to be able to relieve stress and, increase your energy and things like that. And at the end of the day, it depends on where you're holding. Like, if I have a client who comes in and they're used to going to the gym 3 times a week, right? As opposed to a client who never works out and she just thinks that she can't. I think it's about figuring out where you are and understanding that it's not just about the physical results of exercise, like I said, because I often find that when you're only focusing on those physical results, listen, like we're instant gratification kind of people. We want to see results right now. And I'm sure, with exercise, it doesn't work that way. It's a bunch of, consistency is really what brings the results. And I feel like in order to be able to bring consistency with exercise, you need to see that there are other benefits to it, right? So like when I can focus on, great, I just worked out and I feel so energized and I feel so much calmer and my brain is clearer, that's much more motivating for me to try and do it again the next day, as opposed to focusing on having a flatter stomach or to be able to, whatever it is that you're looking to achieve.
So you're saying walking out of the gym and sort of looking at how you practically feel as opposed to focusing on some kind of a physical goal that you want, because it is relatively difficult, especially if your diet is not in line. I think that's also kind of a big misnomer. As a person like, well, I jogged for an hour and, then I went home and ate a donut. Like it's not, the diet's so important. The other thing that I oftentimes say and suggest is that, nowadays we have so many different opportunities for exercise that you actually have to find something that you like doing. For a lot of people, they don't enjoy going and lifting weights. It's awkward. It's uncomfortable. I hate running, but I found like MMA and I love that. So I think that for a lot of people, if you find, if it's dance, if it's whatever it might be, swimming, if you find that thing that you enjoy doing, it also doesn't, as long as it's active, it doesn't feel like it's work. So a lot of times, like you're not like pushing a boulder up a. Again, I have like deep emotional scars from having to run the mile when I was like super fat.
Oh no.
That's like, so like the idea of running is like terrible for me, but I think that's the point, is a lot of people don't have great associations with the gym, and that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. It just means that you should put a little bit of effort and energy into finding something that naturally kind of like goes with you, I guess you could say.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think that's why I like to think of it as movement, because whatever that means for you, like you said, if you enjoy being outside, then you're not going to enjoy doing an exercise video in your house.
Right.
If you enjoy dancing, you might not enjoy lifting weights at the gym.
Right.
And I feel like my goal for my clients is to get them moving, because, a lot of the different stuff I focus on in the health world, it's really about balancing your blood sugar. And that's what's going to help people to ultimately reach their health goals, especially in weight loss. So like, exercise is a huge way, or movement, whatever we want to call it, right? Is a great way in order to help you to balance your blood sugar. But it's just being able to move. Like we all live such like sedentary lifestyles where we're sitting around, we never walk to the store. Like I have a store 5 minutes away, and of course I get in the car and drive, it's different. And I think that being able to, like you said, find a way of moving that you enjoy and that you can do consistently. Because I think that trips up a lot of people when they think that, well, I can't commit to going to the gym 3 times a week for an hour. So I'll say, go on a walk for 15 minutes. Do that every day. That'll do something for you. I mean, for me, honestly, sometimes on my really busy days, I'll set a timer on my phone and I'll set it for 7 minutes and I'll walk as far as I can or run whatever I can do. And then I turn around when the timer goes off and bam, I just got some movement into my day.
Amazing. Okay, Aliza, we're winding down. 2 final questions. If you had like a soapbox where you could just go and tell the world like one thing, and if maybe is it a specific demographic, is it moms who are trying to, take care of so many other people and they have to take care of themselves? Like, what's your like message? What's your thing that you want people to know?
That's a good question. I think, for me, what really comes to mind is that self-care is essential. And like I said in the beginning, that health starts with a decision to take care of yourself. And I feel like that mindset is everything, because unfortunately, women and men as well, we take on and do so much, and we're constantly in a position, especially I feel like, in our Jewish community, where we're giving and doing so much for others. And that's the culture we live in. And yet everybody's like falling apart in the background, when they're at home, when the doors are closed. I see it, I know for myself, I've been there and I see it in my clients. And I feel like self-care is one of the most important things in the world. The way I like to put it is that, we've all heard the saying that, you can't pour from an empty cup, right? So I always took it to mean, okay, so you got to have something in that cup. There's got to be a little something, and then what do you get through? But really, the way that I've seen how really what that's supposed to mean is that your cup is yours, and that always has to be completely full, and other people can benefit from the excess, from the overflow. And it's a totally different way of looking at it. I mean, women look at me like I'm crazy when I tell them that, but it's really true. And not only are you going to benefit from, but other people are going to benefit from that too, because think about the quality you'll be able to give to people, when you're actually making sure that your cup is full. So I think that's one of my biggest messages. And I feel like health and wellness naturally fits into that picture. Like if you're, so.
It's a final question is, how do people find out more about you, working with you? What does it look like? How do they follow you, etc.?
Awesome. So, first of all, you're welcome to check out my website, which is www.alizahendon.com, AlizaHendon. You can also find me on Instagram. Look up Aliza Hendon as well, on Facebook and all those good places.
Fantastic. Aliza, thank you so much.
There you have it, folks, another inspiring episode. If you enjoyed this, I ask you to please share this with your friends and to like us over on Rabbi Rupp through Facebook or on YouTube. And the more that we're able to get these important messages out, the more that we can really make an impact in the world. So I encourage you, please, to stay tuned. We have a ton of amazing speakers coming up, and also to tell your friends about it. Thank you very much.